Welcome back to Study Hall, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into something we all interact with every single day, cooking.
Ooh,
But we're not,
you know,
whipping up a new recipe or anything. We're going all the way back in time to explore its history and its impact on humanity.
mm.
Imagine a world without cooking.
Oh, wow.
No sizzling stir fries, no fluffy bread, just raw ingredients. I mean,
Oh,
can you imagine?
oh, I can't even fathom that.
You'd spend most of your day chewing, trying to get enough nutrients to survive. It makes you appreciate that first spark of culinary innovation, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, to guide us through this journey,
Mm.
we have with us today our expert on all things culinary history.
Thanks for having me. It's so easy to take cooking for granted, but,
Yeah.
it really is a game changer in human history.
Let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with the history of cooking? I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking cavemen and campfires.
Pretty much. The story starts with Homo erectus, our early ancestors, roughly 1 to 1.5 million years ago. And the key turning point, their mastery of fire.
Okay, so we're talking about fire, not necessarily cooking yet.
Right. But think about the implications of controlling fire.
Yeah.
I mean, warmth, protection from predators, the ability to extend activities into the night. It was revolutionary.
And we have archaeological evidence to prove this.
We do. Take Wonderwork Caves in South Africa. Deep within this cave, archaeologists found ash layers dating back nearly 1 million years.
Really?
Yeah. This suggests early humans were intentionally bringing fire into the caves, not just taking advantage of natural wildfires.
1 million years ago. That's mind-boggling. It really puts our modern relationship with fire into perspective. But how do we know they were using it for cooking and not just staying warm?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. There's a site in Israel, Quesem Cave. It provides some strong clues. This cave, dating back about 780,000 years, contains one of the oldest known hearths, a designated fire pit,
Okay.
and not just any fire pit.
What was special about this one?
Okay, picture this. Layers of ash, burnt animal bones, flint tools showing signs of heat exposure. Archaeologists even found charred bones with cut marks, suggesting meat was intentionally prepared and then cooked.
So they were moving beyond opportunistic scavenging to something more deliberate, like the
Yeah.
earliest hints of culinary intention. That's fascinating. But this raises a big question. What prompted this transition from raw to cooked food? I mean, was it a
Yeah.
sudden discovery or a gradual process?
Well, that's a question that's fascinated anthropologists for years. And one of the most compelling theories is the cooking hypothesis, proposed by primatologist Richard Wrangham.
Okay, I've heard of this. It links cooking to our brain development, but how does that work exactly?
It's all about efficiency and energy. Think about chimpanzees, our primate cousins. They spend around 6 hours a day chewing raw food.
Wow.
Cooking, on the other hand, breaks down tough fibers, making food easier to digest, unlocking more calories with less effort. And that surplus energy could then be directed toward, brain development.
So basically, by cooking our food, we freed up time and energy for our brains to grow and evolve. That's amazing.
Exactly, and we see this reflected in our anatomy, compared to our earlier hominid ancestors, Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Have smaller teeth, weaker jaws, and shorter digestive tracts. These are all adaptations consistent with a diet of cooked food.
So cooking didn't just change our diets, it actually shaped our physical evolution. But didn't a shorter digestive tract also mean they could absorb fewer nutrients overall? Was there a trade-off there?
That's a great question. And while it's true that a shorter digestive tract, might mean less surface area for nutrient absorption, the increased digestibility of cooked food more than compensates for this. Think about it. By cooking, they could access a wider variety of foods, break down tough fibers, and extract more nutrients from each bite. This led to an overall increase in nutrient intake, even with a shorter digestive tract. It's a testament to how adaptable the human body can be.
That makes a lot of sense. So cooking is not just about convenience. It's a biological advantage that fueled our evolution. But I'm also curious about the social implications. I mean, did this shift to cooked food change how early humans interacted?
Absolutely. Imagine gathering around a fire, sharing a cooked meal with your group. This communal activity fostered cooperation. Someone had to gather firewood, tend the fire, prepare the food. It necessitated working together.
It's almost like
Yeah.
the original team-building exercise. And that shared experience of preparing and enjoying a meal probably strengthened social bonds. But did it lead to anything, beyond just friendly gatherings?
You're onto something. Those early gatherings around the fire might have been the crucible for more complex social behaviors. Think about it. Sharing food equitably, coordinating hunting strategies, developing communication skills. These all likely emerge from these shared experiences. Some anthropologists even suggest that early forms of morality, like fairness and reciprocity, might have originated from the need to share food and cooperate around the fire.
So from solitary eaters to social foodies, all thanks to the power of cooking.
It's amazing how something as simple as cooking could have such a massive ripple effect on our evolution and social development.
And that ripple effect only intensified
Yeah.
as early humans continued to innovate and experiment with new cooking techniques. They weren't content with just roasting over an open fire. They were constantly pushing the boundaries of culinary possibility.
Yeah, so I'm hooked. What came next? In our prehistoric culinary adventure, did they invent the microwave yet?
Huh, not quite. But they did come up with some pretty ingenious ways to cook, even without pottery. Think boiling food in animal hides, or wooden containers using heated stones.
Wait, boiling without pots? How did they pull that off?
They heated stones in the fire and then dropped them into water-filled containers, essentially creating a makeshift boiling pot. It's a testament to human ingenuity,
Yeah.
using available resources to solve a problem.
That's brilliant. They were like the MacGyvers of the Stone Age, whipping up prehistoric stews. But why boil? What were the advantages over roasting? Well, boiling allowed them to cook tougher cuts of meat and soften grains, making them more digestible and nutritious. They could even extract nutrients from bones by boiling them for extended periods, a technique that provided essential minerals and fats. It expanded their culinary repertoire significantly.
They're mastering fire, roasting, boiling. What's next? Sous vide cooking with mammoth steaks.
Not quite sous vide, but they did start experimenting with other techniques, like roasting on spits for more even cooking, smoking food for preservation. They even stumbled upon fermentation.
Fermentation, like
But-
an accident.
Probably. Imagine leaving some fruits or grains out in the warm weather. Boom! Accidental fermentation. And it turns out, fermented foods have some surprising benefits.
Like what, aside from, creating delicious, slightly boozy concoctions?
Well, fermented foods often have higher levels of certain vitamins and probiotics, which are good for gut health. It's a fascinating example of how early humans, even without understanding the science, were able to create foods that enhanced their health and well-being.
It really makes you wonder how many other culinary delights we owe to happy accidents in the kitchen. I know I've had my share of accidental culinary creations, but we won't go into that now.
I think we've all been there. But going back to those early cooks, they are clearly becoming quite resourceful.
Absolutely, they were adapting, innovating, and creating a surprisingly diverse culinary landscape.
And things were about to get even more interesting. The agricultural revolution, which began around 10,000 BCE, changed everything.
Okay, I can see how farming would impact what they ate, but how did it change their cooking?
Imagine going from relying on whatever you could hunt or gather to having a consistent supply of specific plants and animals. That meant they could experiment with new recipes and techniques, leading to a culinary explosion.
So the agricultural revolution wasn't just about farming, it was about culinary innovation as well. Okay, I'm ready to hear all about it.
It was a pivotal moment in culinary history, Before agriculture,
Yeah.
our ancestors relied on whatever wild plants and animals they could find. Their diet was limited by seasonality and availability.
Yeah, I can't imagine planning a menu based on whatever I stumbled across in the wilderness.
Exactly. But with agriculture, humans could cultivate specific crops and raise livestock, creating a more reliable and diverse food supply. This fundamentally changed the culinary landscape.
So they went from foraging to farming, from hunter-gatherers to agricultural artisans.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What were some of the key culinary breakthroughs that emerged from this shift?
Well, one of the most significant developments was the invention of bread. It's hard to imagine a world without bread, isn't it?
It really is.
But before agriculture, grains were tough and difficult to digest.
I've tried baking with wild grains before, and let's just say it requires a lot of patience.
Yeah.
A good jaw workout.
Exactly. But our ingenious ancestors figured out a way to transform these tough grains into something delicious and digestible. Archaeological evidence suggests that even pre-agricultural societies were making simple flatbreads. By grinding wild grains and mixing them with water to form a paste, they would then cook this paste on hot stones or in early clay ovens. So they were already experimenting with bread making, even before they fully embraced agriculture.
That's right. They were laying the groundwork for one of humanity's most beloved foods. And once farming took hold, bread-making techniques became even more sophisticated.
Oh, like what? Did they start adding sourdough starter and fancy toppings back then?
Not quite, but they did start using stone mills to grind grains into finer flour, resulting in more uniform and textured bread. And then came the accidental discovery of leavening, using natural yeast to make the dough rise.
So they stumbled upon yeast, which led to fluffier, more flavorful bread. It's almost like a culinary chain reaction. And to think, it all started with those early experiments with grinding wild grains. It's incredible how human ingenuity builds upon itself, isn't it?
It really is. And speaking of accidental discoveries, remember our discussion about fermentation?
Yes.
Well, it led to another game-changing innovation. Beer.
Wait, beer was an accident too? I knew I liked fermentation for a reason. Okay, tell me everything. How did they go from, say, a bowl of soggy grains to a frosty mug of beer?
Picture this. Early humans are storing grains in water, maybe for later use, or perhaps just experimenting. Over time, natural fermentation kicks in, and the mixture starts to bubble and produce a mildly intoxicating effect. And voila, beer is born.
It makes you wonder how many other culinary delights we owe to happy accidents.
I'm starting to think experimentation is the key to culinary greatness.
I think you're onto something. But back to beer. The earliest evidence of beer production comes from ancient Sumeria, around 5000 BCE. They even had dedicated brewers who refined the process, malting the grains, boiling them with water, and fermenting them with wild yeast.
So from an accidental discovery to a specialized craft, that's impressive. But was beer just a fun beverage for them, or did it serve a more practical purpose?
It was actually both. Beer provided important nutrients and was often a safer alternative to drinking water, which was frequently contaminated.
Ah, so a multi-purpose drink. Nutritious, safer than water, and,
Yeah.
of course, a bit intoxicating. I can see why it caught on. But what about other dietary staples? Did they discover the wonders of kale smoothies yet? Not quite kale smoothies, but the domestication of animals, like cattle, sheep, and goats, introduced a whole new category of food. Dairy.
Of course, on dairy products. I'm curious, what kinds of dairy products were they making back then? I'm picturing some sort of ancient cheese, maybe a primordial yogurt. Am I close?
You're right on the money. Yogurt was likely another accidental discovery. Milk stored in warm conditions would naturally ferment due to beneficial bacteria.
Ah, another win for accidental fermentation. It seems like those early food innovators were quite lucky,
Yeah.
or maybe just really good at paying attention to those happy accidents. But how did they go from accidentally fermented milk to, actual yogurt? Did they have special yogurt making tools?
Well, they may not have had specialized tools, but they definitely learned to control the process. They realized that adding a small amount of previously fermented milk to fresh milk would kickstart the fermentation process and create a more consistent product. This is essentially the same technique we use to make yogurt today, using a starter culture to introduce the beneficial bacteria.
So even without understanding the science behind it, they figured out a way to replicate and refine the process. That's impressive. But what about cheese? Did they stumble upon that by accident too?
It's hard to say for sure, but the discovery of cheese likely stemmed from a practical need to preserve milk. Imagine figuring out that you could separate the curds and whey, creating a more durable and longer-lasting food source. That was a game changer.
It really is. It's incredible how they were able to transform something as perishable as milk into something so versatile and long-lasting. So they're baking bread, brewing beer, crafting yogurt and cheese. It sounds like the ancient culinary scene is getting pretty sophisticated.
Absolutely. And remember, these innovations weren't just happening in isolation. They were spreading, evolving, and merging with other cultural practices, creating a rich tapestry of culinary traditions.
Okay, I have to ask, were there any ancient culinary flops? Like, okay, did they ever try to ferment something that just didn't work out? I'm picturing a prehistoric version of a Pinterest recipe gone wrong.
I'm sure there were plenty of culinary mishaps along the way. Not every experiment would have been a success. But that's part of the process of innovation, isn't it? Trying new things, learning from mistakes, and constantly refining techniques. That's how culinary traditions evolve.
That's a great point. It's not just about the successes. It's about the willingness to experiment, to push boundaries, and sometimes to embrace those happy accidents. It's a good reminder that even in the kitchen, failure can be a stepping stone to something amazing. But getting back to the bigger picture, we've gone from roasting meat over an open fire to baking bread, brewing beer, and creating yogurt and cheese. It's been an incredible journey through culinary history.
It has. But remember, we're not just talking about food. These culinary innovations had a profound impact on human societies. They shaped our cultures, our economies, and even our social structures.
That's a fascinating thought. So we've talked about the how of cooking, but now I'm curious about the why. Why did these culinary advancements matter so much in the grand scheme of things?
Well, think about it. A stable food supply is, like, crucial for any civilization to thrive.
Right.
And the agricultural revolution. Coupled with all those culinary inventions we've been discussing, it provided exactly that,
Yeah,
a reliable and abundant source of food.
makes sense. With a steady supply of food, people could focus on other things, developing art, technology, more complex social structures. They weren't constantly scrambling for their next meal.
Exactly. It goes even deeper than that, though.
Okay.
Food wasn't just fuel. I mean, it was intertwined with their culture, religion, and social hierarchy.
Okay, give me some examples. I'm all ears. How did food, something so basic, become so central to these ancient civilizations?
Let's take bread, for example.
Okay.
In many ancient cultures, it wasn't just like a source of calories, it held symbolic meaning.
Yeah.
In ancient Egypt, bread was so valuable, it was even used as a form of currency.
Wow. Bread as currency. That's fascinating. So they were literally baking their way to economic stability.
Amazing, isn't it? And it wasn't just bread. Beer played a huge role in Mesopotamian society,
Right.
often used in religious ceremonies and social gatherings.
I see.
Dairy became central to pastoralist cultures.
Right.
Food became a way to express cultural identity, to connect with something larger than themselves.
So in a way, these culinary innovations were like building blocks for civilization.
Yeah.
They provided sustenance, but also a sense of community, shared rituals, and even economic power. It's incredible to think about how something as simple as preparing and sharing food could have such a profound impact.
It's a testament to the power of food, isn't it?
Yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
way beyond just satisfying our hunger. It connects us to our history, our culture, and to each other.
And it continues to shape our world today. Think about the global food trade, the cultural significance of certain dishes, the way food brings people together. It's a legacy that stretches back thousands of years to those early innovators who first harnessed fire and transformed raw ingredients into something more.
And it's an evolving legacy. As technology advances and cultures continue to blend, the future of cooking holds, like, exciting possibilities.
Right.
Who knows what culinary innovations await us?
That's a great point. It's not just about looking back, it's about looking forward. What new ingredients will we discover? How will technology change the way we prepare food? And what new culinary traditions will emerge as cultures continue to interact and evolve?
These are all fascinating questions.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the story of cooking is still being written, and each one of us plays a role in shaping that story.
Absolutely. So for all of you listening out there, I encourage you to think about your own relationship with food. What are your favorite culinary traditions? How has cooking impacted your life and your connections with others? And what role do you see food playing in the future? This deep dive has certainly left me hungry for more knowledge and inspired to get back in the kitchen and experiment.
That's the spirit. Remember, cooking is more than just following a recipe. It's about creativity, innovation, and connection. So go forth, explore new flavors, and keep those culinary fires burning.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this culinary journey through time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And until next time, keep those minds curious and those appetites for knowledge satisfied.